Hey folks, Jay Walker here, just jumping in ahead of this week's episode to let you in on a little shiphead insider knowledge. So believe it or not, this December marks the 5th Venture 15 and Venture Asheville Honors Awards. Every year, the event gets bigger, the rankings get more competitive, and the quality of applications just increases. So if you're new to Asheville or the startup scene, know that this is the celebration of the year for startups. We publish and rank the 15 fastest growing startups in the region. We honor mentors, investors, founders, and more. We also award the best startup to work for. This year's show is December 15th at the Orange Peel. Tickets are $30, but you can get $5 off with the code TALKSHIP. All lowercase, one word, TALKSHIP. That's $5 off using the code TALKSHIP. So you can find the link for tickets in the show notes. And now let's get into our conversation from Halloween Day with Alex Feiszli of Netmaker.
Greetings, shipheads, and welcome to Talkin' Ship, the Venture Asheville podcast where we talk about issues and topics in entrepreneurship. We are the Venture Asheville team. Venture Asheville is the high-growth entrepreneurship initiative of the Economic Development Coalition for Asheville-Buncombe County. We build entrepreneurs and get startups funded. I'm Jeffrey Kaplan, this ship's captain, director of Venture Asheville, lover of my new standing desk. That's right, one of our employees left and I quickly went into her office and snagged her speakers and standing desk to allow me to reorient my office and for my desk. So for those of you who are watching this on our YouTube, I'm spinning my camera around. I get to see my view now. I get the trolley, some beautiful fall foliage, the dumpster, and this is also where the Segway tours start from. So it's a laugh a minute when you zoom with me. As much as I appreciated the 4 years I got to work side by side with April Brown, I really appreciate her desk that I now have and I'm using. With me, as always, is the wonderful, smart, talented, considerate, and creative Juliana Moon Walker, our master of interactive media. Moonwalker, what's good?
It's all good over here in Leicester, where I live, where I'm working from home and having an espresso. So, yeah, it's great. Things are going well. Happy to be here on a Monday, and it's Halloween. So
it's a holiday.
It's a holiday.
Day. You are wearing some
cat
really
ears.
Like mid-century modern fun cat ears.
Yeah, I got them at a bachelorette party this past summer that was Taylor Swift themed. And I've been using them ever since for things like this when I have to put on a very, very low effort costume. So,
but they're cool. They're sleek. They're not obnoxious.
Yeah, they're like not metal, in your face,
right?
Yeah, and they're comfortable.
Oh yeah.
Forgot I had them on.
For those of you who are watching the podcast, you recognize me as Blippi, the child show thing. I don't know. It turns out I look way too much like the guy. And all my friends and family said he had to be Blippi for Halloween. And I am. Tonight when we go trick-or-treating, I'll be Blippi with a flock of chickens. My family is all going as chickens.
Very, very on theme.
Halloween in Asheville is pretty cool. Growing up in South Florida, I think the fall colors just get everyone in the spirit a different way. We didn't have it like this. It's pretty cool how much everyone decorates and been a really, really nice fall season. This, of course, brought to you by movetoasheville.com. All right. Today we get to speak with an Ash famous emerging tech founder, Alex Feiszli. Alex Feiszli. Yeah, there he is. He's here tonight. He'd say hi. Yeah, there he is. Alex Feiszli sees the world in zeros and ones, much like Neo at the end of the first Matrix movie. I have not seen the most recent Matrix film, but now it feels like a good time to tell one of my favorite stories from high school. We were at a pep rally, the day before. It was like a Friday, so I guess the second Matrix movie or the third one, it released like Thursday night. And a bunch of our friends went to the midnight showing, and they were in school Friday talking about it. And during the pep rally, one kid spoiled that one of the characters dies at the end.
Oof.
And a straight up fist fight broke out. Can you imagine being a high school senior or high school junior and Matrix is coming out, right? It's like we're all losing our minds. This is the coolest movie ever. And I remember that so clearly. I was like, right inside of it, punches being thrown because the spoiler happened. Oh, that's it. I haven't seen the fourth one. I don't know if I need to.
I have seen it, and you don't need to see it. It's it'll ruin everything if you enjoyed the first three. So
yeah, good to know. I did watch the third Bill and Ted. Also, talk about a Keanu Reeves sequel that happened 20 years later. That too, kind of disappointing.
Hard to do a sequel 20 years later.
I don't think any have really been done very well. That's a good trivia question. What sequel of at least 20 years was worth it?
Hocus Pocus 2 is apparently just coming out. I haven't seen it.
I wasn't in the first one. I bet Jay Walker
was pretty good.
Oh, that's a good great example.
Which one?
Yeah.
More than 20 years for a sequel.
Top Gun Maverick.
Oh yeah.
That was pretty solid. I think that was the romance was there compared to the
between the pilots in this one. I
know. Well, the famous Tom Cruise and his co-star in the original famously have very bad chemistry. So they have a very lovely blue, tonguey, sexy. Sorry. I'll cut that part out.
Or not. It's kind of crazy. Those listening at home, if you can think of other films with very, I don't know what you call that, like very lapsed sequels, generations of fans apart, don't tweet us because we don't use Twitter. I don't know, Facebook, and slide into my Instagram DMs and tell me about what sequels that were that far apart were worth it. Okay, this is
back on track.
This is my favorite intro. Speaking of, we met Alex peak pandemic. We tossed him into the MXP accelerator with our friends at GrowthX Capital. He went on to not only be the first Western North Carolina company to ever make it into the extremely competitive Y Combinator accelerator. He just cashed $2.3 million in fundraising in the bank. Cha-ching! A heck of a start to a company. What do you have, like 1,500 paid users? Is that what I read? A couple thousand users and paying users, right? Like you guys are cruising for such a small and young and nimble team. It's just out the gates. You're making it look too easy. Let's dive in and meet Alex and find out WTF Netmaker is all about. To be clear, the name of the company is not WTF Netmaker. That was me trying to be clever with an acronym. The company is called Netmaker. Alex, before we get to the dessert and get into the good stuff, give me the veggies. Make me earn it. Who are you and what is your background?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Alex Feiszli. And first of all, I feel bad that I didn't wear a Halloween costume. I feel like I should have now. But
we didn't put it in the show notes. Anything nearby you can put on.
I have a spooky goblet.
Nice.
He's in. I can do.
All right. We're Halloweening. Halloweening. Hey.
Heyo.
But yeah, so who am I? I'm Alex Feiszli. I've been doing this startup for a couple of years now. I've really loved doing it. I come from an engineering background. I worked at IBM before this. I worked with a partner of Red Hat before that. So I've been in this open source networking and compute space for quite a while. And yeah, during the pandemic, my co-founder and I, my co-founder being Dylan, we decided we were going to leave IBM and make a business of our own. And that's what ended up happening. So it's been quite an adventure. But I've enjoyed it a lot so far. So,
and your background before that, were you a CS degree or something like that, or engineering degrees?
Yeah, so I guess to go a bit further in the background, so I actually studied economics in college. I did a minor in computer science, and then actually in college I did this. It was called the Kaufman Entrepreneurial Program, and so I got a free extra year of college. And took a bunch of computer science classes. And my entrepreneurial project was to do a web development business. So I got an early start at kind of combining programming and entrepreneurship. So then
And where'd you go to college? Was this University of Florida?
University of Rochester.
Rochester, right on. Okay, very good. So you
Yeah.
went from up in New York down to Red Hat, IBM, is that right? Or something in
Actually,
between?
first off, I was over at Deloitte
Hmm.
in DC. So I was doing
Mhm.
tech consulting for Deloitte. Got to do some development there. I was a development lead on a pretty big account. And yeah, from there is when I went to the partner of Red Hat. Their name is Crossveil. And
Mhm.
that's when I got into the whole open source world. The first thing
Gotcha.
they gave me was a laptop that they said, okay, you're going to put Linux on this, and that's all
Mhm.
you use from now on. And so I kind of got thrown into it. I started
Mhm.
using Kubernetes there. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then when IBM acquired Red Hat, a lot of interesting opportunities popped up over there. So I
Mhm.
got the chance to work for IBM and lead a couple teams actually for data science infrastructure and for multi-cloud computing. And yeah, it was a lot of fun there. And then during the pandemic was when I decided to give it a try doing my own thing.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people would agree that multi-cloud enterprise management is fun. Um, so you've definitely found your tribe, Alex. Interesting. I didn't know that story about you and Dylan. Um, and it's one of the indicators of the best co-founders relationships, because they're kind of like marriages, like the partnership between people. The
Hmm.
best ones typically come from coworkers at their current company who leave together to start a new company. I think Instagram is very famous for that too, and you and Dylan kind of fit that mold. And it's different because it's not a family relationship, which has a whole different set of nuance and issues. And it wasn't like you guys are um, like best friends who decided to go into business together. I think that because it starts from a professional place, it leads to really healthy and respectful co-founder relationships. It's just my 2 cents from what I see, in market.
Yeah, definitely. And we got along great there, which is
Hmm.
why we wanted to do this. We mesh pretty well. He has a very similar sense of humor to me, very, very dry sense of humor, but
Hmm.
we get each other with it pretty well. And yeah, we like doing similar stuff. We go rock climbing together and mountain biking. So
Awesome.
it meshed well, both working together and just hanging out, which I agree is kind of the chemistry you're looking for with
Yeah.
a startup.
What's his name was Steve Stolberg, one of the professors I worked for when I was at UF, University of Florida. He said to me one day it really changed how I thought about building teams and coworkers and co-founders. He said, "I've had more meals with my co-founders than I had my family." Right, like over the years, when his kids got older, had sports and things after school, like how often the whole family sat together, versus like every day is grabbing a bite with the person sitting next to the table. And think about like how important that relationship is interpersonally.
Yeah, and I didn't think about it that much until it's hard to think of how important it becomes, but it really is like a marriage in many
Mhm.
ways. Where, you've got to work through conflicts and solve problems together, and you know, um, you're kind of bound working with this
Yeah.
baby that you've
Yeah.
created of a business.
Right. Right. Kind of watch it grow and stand on its own.
Hmm.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of marriage comparisons for sure. Um, I could do this all day, but I want to focus on what you're working on. So Netmaker, you were written about in Citizen Times. You were in TechCrunch last week. Like a lot of press blowing you up. But tell us, for our audience, what is the problem you solve?
Yeah, for sure. So, actually, to give a little bit of background on it, so Dylan and I actually had a different idea when we started our business, and we've changed our business name 3 times now.
I
Originally, it was
remember Gravital.
yeah, it was Gravital.
And
Before
there's
that
something before
was
Gravital.
Falcon Cat.
I remember that's when we met. It was Falcon Cat when we met.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it was Falcon Cat,
You
and then we were
both
like, oh,
chose your
that's too
favorite animals.
embarrassing.
Is that what it was? You guys were like, you get one, I get one, put them together and see that's why I make the team name, company name.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, let me pause you right there. Juliana, what's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal is a
Yeah.
panda.
Panda. Okay, I would go kangaroo. We could
Okay.
have panda kangaroo. And
Can't
that
think
could
of it.
be a company name. All right, I'm going to see if that
Beautiful.
URL is available. In the meantime, Alex, back with your story.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, is finding a URL that's really determines the name quite a bit. But yeah, so the original idea was to build a distributed cloud provider. The idea was, there's AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, and they all have these giant data centers. And our idea was, you have the same thing, but you don't have any data centers, and instead people contribute their own computers to this cloud provider. So to do that, we were going to use Kubernetes for it. And then we would also need a really, really powerful distributed mesh VPN, a virtual networking platform that could bind together all these machines and make them work together. So I did a lot of research and tried to find the right tool that could do it. And there wasn't really a tool out there that could do what we were looking for. So I was like, okay, I don't want to have to build it, but
Right.
I'd rather it just be there already, but it's not. So I'll build it. So we started building this thing, and yeah, we made it, and we were like, hey, this is a pretty cool thing. Maybe we put it on GitHub, which is a place that like a lot of coders will put their stuff, and see if we get, some good publicity out of it. So we put it on there, and it got really popular pretty early on. So after a while of working with that, we decided, hey, this is actually, it was a problem for us. It's a problem other people are having. Let's stick with this, because actually this virtual networking thing is actually really important. And it's something, it's something that is ripe for disruption, because if you look in the virtual networking space, there's all these tools from like 20 years ago, before things like the cloud and Kubernetes and IoT came out. And that's really what we're focusing on, is those use cases and building a virtual networking platform that works for these modern use cases that IT businesses deal with today.
So even if you don't know what Kubernetes is, or Azure, or GitHub, there's just incredible lessons in that origin story, Alex. I didn't even know, and I've known you for a couple of years. The presence of mind to drop your ego and allow the market to, number one, validate what you have is a skill most entrepreneurs do not possess. To say, I have this passion, I have this personal interest, but the market is clearly leading us towards something else. We should follow that. Letting the market lead you is always the best way to pursue opportunity, and clearly it's paying off for you guys. And the other is something I didn't understand firsthand. When I was in grad school, I was talking to an attorney about a patent for a project we're doing, about this business we're going to launch. And he said something to me I didn't get, but you summarized it well. He said, if you patent this, going down this path might reveal a better opportunity for you. And when you're starting a company, there's all this, I think maybe it's ego driven, maybe it's narcissism, that, that myth of entrepreneurship. Like I'm the Steve Jobs. This is I know what the market needs. This is the product everyone's been looking for. But yeah, sometimes you have to build an infrastructure, or you have to build something to support that future state. And that can be more scalable, a bigger market, and more valuable than your personal passion, your personal interest. And so, this is a masterclass in that, Alex. And it's a wonderful part of your story that I didn't know. Thank you so much for sharing that. But while I'm on the topic, what is Kubernetes? And did you invent it?
I did not. Some much smarter people invented Kubernetes. But I guess to try to put it, let's try to think of a simple way to put this. So businesses have their applications in the cloud right now. Everything you're using is on the cloud somewhere.
I'm
pretty
using
much
Google Meet.
Yeah, using Google Meet.
Outlook online for my mail.
Yep.
I use Slack to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
These are all cloud-based applications.
Yep. Everything that works with the internet pretty much is running on the cloud. Even all the apps on your phone, they're probably communicating with some backend that's running in the cloud. But like what it means to actually run in the cloud is something that people from my profession deal with all the time, which is actually getting these applications deployed into a location, which there's these giant cloud providers, which are essentially data centers. And one of the problems people ran into for the first like 10 years of running in the cloud was you'd have to deploy in very specific ways for each different cloud provider, for each different data center. And it ended up being really complicated to do to manage differences, and it made it hard to move your applications if you ever changed your hosting provider or whatever. But then Kubernetes came along, which is basically this framework for deploying applications in the cloud, and it's super flexible, it's super dynamic, and it basically lets companies build their application once and then deploy it wherever they need to deploy it, as opposed to dealing with all these really special ways to deploy it. So in essence, it's a new framework for deploying the applications that all of us use every day.
Awesome. And so again, your company then, what do you do with Kubernetes and these enterprise clients who have applications across multiple clouds? What value are you providing them?
Yeah, so Kubernetes is one of our use cases, but essentially Kubernetes is a distributed computing framework, and it automates and controls how these different applications get deployed in places. And what we do is build a networking solution that helps these applications to communicate with each other when they're in different places. So there are terms that have come up like multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, edge computing, IoT, and these terms, all of them indicate applications that are deployed in like different places, in different data centers. They could be halfway around the world, but these different applications need to communicate with each other, and we provide that communication layer.
I love it. Jay Walker, you following all this?
I'm trying to.
So we don't
I'm
get
leaning
a
back
lot
on my education.
Yeah, your
a little
interactive
bit.
media degrees.
Yeah.
So this is definitely one of the more emerging tech IT focused companies we have in Elevate in our community in Venture Asheville. The other one I'm thinking of is Level.io, Jacob Haub's company, which is remote
Those
device
guys are great,
management.
by the way.
Yeah, they're killing it. They're doing a great job too. So thinking about you and thinking about Jacob, tell us, what is it like to build something so enterprise, so IT focused from here, in Foodtopia, Beer City, Asheville? Like, what's it like to build something like that here?
Yeah, I mean, Asheville's a fantastic city, so it's great to be here. And I moved here during the pandemic. I was one of those people. And I did it because it was a fantastic place to live. And my grandpa has lived here for many years. And every time I visited, I thought, I want to live here. But, work always brought me to other cities. But now that I was able to determine where I could live, this is where I chose to live. And, I think that's the main reason we ended up here. And building a business here is probably a lot like building a business in a lot of places nowadays, because we're one of those businesses that's remote first. So really the main thing we need to build a business is an internet connection. And as long as we can do Zoom calls, as long as we can work in we work in our Discord server mostly, that's what we need to get the job done. So, yeah, it's been great so far, and I could say a whole lot more about it.
So I do want to dive in a little more. What are some of the affordances and constraints, the pros and the cons to building something so tech focused here? So for a decade ago, for example, your company could only thrive in the Bay Area or Boston or New York, right? A major tech hub with tech talent and tech capital sources behind it. Now, clearly, because of the pandemic and the digital transformation of our whole society, that's not a barrier. And I wonder, are there any pros? Do you feel like a bigger fish in a smaller pond? Is it more collaborative here? Or do you feel isolated? What are some of the pros and cons to building Netmaker here?
Yeah, a couple things that I think are still probably a bit more difficult than like say if you're in Silicon Valley or New York City, is a big part of building a business is the two things are networking, and then that inherent business community if you're B2B. So, and those two intertwine where New York City and Silicon Valley, they have networking events every single day. They've got these giant conferences that you can go to and work with other people. So those are good opportunities just to meet other people in the space. And then also, if you're specifically doing B2B, it's a lot easier if you are close by to those businesses. And that's a lot less true today than it was, 3 years ago. But I think coming out of the pandemic, it's becoming a bit more true now. But those two things said, I mean, one thing, a lot of these conferences, a lot of these networking opportunities are going virtual. And I'm meeting a ton of people just virtually nowadays. And it's not as important to be in person. Secondly, that community is building here. So it's still small, obviously relative to Silicon Valley. It's pretty small, but it's growing and people want to come here. And we were some of those people who wanted to come here. So those I think are more on the con side, but then there's tons of pros that come with being here. You know, the main one to me is just quality of life, and the quality of life is just so much higher. When you're starting a business, you want to be in a place where you're able to enjoy being there. And Asheville really allows you to do that, like with the whole breweries and outdoors and just activities, and the people are all great. So it's a really, really fun place to live. And to me, that's like the big thing about starting a business now is you want to be where people want to live. And Asheville's a really big draw for that reason. And then the one other I'd say is just, we are much more capital efficient being here than we would be running out of Silicon Valley. It's Silicon, like the wage inflation there is kind of crazy. There's tons of talented people from this area who are just as good as Silicon Valley engineers, but just because of how expensive it is to live over there, they've made the wages match. So if our business was based over there, we'd probably have to raise twice as much to do what we're doing, but we can be more efficient with that money.
Our mutual friend from GrowthX, Andrew Goldner, he talks about that this idea that like we don't develop technology anymore. Like all we're doing now is applying technology. So it's all done, and our engineers, right, don't have to be so far like cutting edge. Like that's a different space now. So it's like I think it kind of validates what you're saying. Like we don't need, a roster of Stanford computer science PhDs to work for our company, and can still be innovative and groundbreaking because we're applying technology as opposed to developing these kind of things.
Yeah. And if you do need someone with super specialized knowledge, which we do for some of the things we do, but like, because we're remote first, if we do really need someone from outside the area, there is that option too.
And so what was fundraising like for you? I imagine being a Y Combinator puts you in a different ecosystem for sure. And you announced 2.3 million. So I'm curious, when you're doing your pitching or you're just talking to investors and you say, yeah, I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. Number one, what's their reaction? And two, give us if you could, some insight into the fundraising journey.
Yeah, for sure. So on fundraising in general is a lot of tough work. So that's not something I would sugarcoat at all. It takes a lot of work. And I think anything you look up about it is probably going to be pretty accurate in terms of what you're going to have to go through to get it done. So yeah, Fundraising was mostly on me, which let my co-founder continue to build the product, which is definitely a good idea. You don't want both people full-time fundraising. But yeah, you got to learn to take rejection pretty well, which, is a good skill to have. But in terms of being in Asheville, surprising number of the investors I talked to actually knew about Asheville, and we're like, oh, that's a really cool town. I've been there before, and they actually liked it quite a bit. And I would say for us, it didn't really affect things so much in our fundraising. Now, I think we had a big advantage of having that Y Combinator stamp on us. It does make a big difference on your startup resume to have a big accelerator there. So I know fundraising in the Southeast is a little different. Most of our investors, or actually all of our investors, are not located in the Southeast. We
I
ended
love
up
that.
raising
I
mostly.
love that. Let me tell you why I love that so
Yeah.
much. Because that is an incredibly effective way to grow our GDP. If you're a
Mhm.
locally headquartered company and you're raising funding outside our area and it's sitting here and being spent here, I mean, payroll is probably your highest expense for sure, but
Mhm.
still a lot of benefit to, the founders are here. And so the money is controlled from here and it does grow our GDP. It's one of my favorite things to do, to fundraise from outside our area.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, I would say a lot of it is kind of, you have to be a certain style of business to raise that way. Obviously we're a pretty high tech type of business, so we're able to operate and raise sort of like one of those Silicon Valley style startups, despite not being over there. So it is definitely a benefit we had while doing it. Though at the same time, I it can be tough to communicate the topics we're working on, even to like very domain specific investors. Other tech people have a hard time understanding what I'm talking about a lot of the time. So communication with pitching is
Sure.
definitely a pain point with it.
So how do you refine that pitch? Like what training or advice did you get on how to distill that message, that value prop down to as few words as possible?
Yeah, and it's something, I'll be honest, I still struggle with. I think I could do a lot better at it. One thing that helped me a lot was just doing it based on the investor I'm talking to. And I would say the investors we ended up getting tended to be very technical ones who understood what we were doing, which I love
Yeah,
because,
totally.
our investors get us, they get what we're
Hmm.
doing. So a big part of it is finding the right investors
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah.
what we're doing. But then in terms of refining the message, I think it's kind of like, what's it called? There's these kind of have you seen these videos where they explain some things at different education levels? It'll be like explaining
Hmm.
concept
Hmm.
at a 5-year-old level, and then at like a third grader level, and then at middle school and high school PhD level. So I think that's a very good exercise for figuring
That's great.
out. And then when you're talking to them, you can kind of
Hmm.
gauge where on that chart you need to be.
Hmm. That's great. So you got $2.3 million, which is amazing, just incredible. How are you going to spend it? How much of that is a donation to the Venture Asheville Human Fund to help my
Oh yeah.
kids afford the JCC? It's very expensive.
Well, here today we're here now.
Do you have a big check
um,
behind you? Just kidding, of course. I'm kidding, of course. I'm not allowed to ask that of founders. I just try to trick them into every chance I get. All right, Jay, just cut the last 30 seconds. Alex, big check in the bank. How are you spending that $2.3 million?
so it's pretty much entirely on salaries, and
Yeah, all people, right? Yeah.
yeah, on people. That's how tech gets made.
Hmm.
We need some software, we need some servers, but that costs almost
Yeah.
nothing next to just getting the
And
people to get the job done.
let me ask you, what's your average salary of a new hire? Do you have a
For
range of
us,
hiring range, maybe, or a band?
yeah. It's actually, I'm not sure if I want to disclose it or not.
Okay, that's fine. I imagine it's 6 figures and up.
It's actually quite a bit lower than that.
Oh, really? Okay.
So,
Jay,
yeah.
edit all of this. Cut, just slice this whole section out. Let's try that again. All right. I'm dead serious. You gotta cut all of this.
Okay.
All right, Alex, you raised a big check, 2.3 million. What is the plan to spend it?
Yeah. So it's on people. People are the most important thing. So we're building a team. We're currently about 6 of us. We're bringing on 2 more starting in the next
Great.
couple weeks, and that's going to be our team for the next, let's say, probably about a year. And then it's to build out the product, get us to revenue, and move us to our next stage as a business.
Do you have an ESOP or anything like that in your shares, in your cap table?
That's the
employee
employees.
stock option plan.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so our employees do get stock options.
So many things talking about, Alex, are standards we'd love to see happen more in Asheville. So like, I mean, just what you're doing alone, right? Being a small business owner, yeah, it's a high growth startup. It's still a small business, right? That is the leading driver of net new job creation, right? You see it right here and what you're doing. You're creating not just jobs for people, but like lifestyles. And now they can afford to buy homes and send their kids to school. And, that's how they can donate to charities and be philanthropic and give back to communities. It's amazing. And it really starts from people like you. And the next piece of that, because you have that employee stock option plan, I mean, the retention on employees when they have stock options is so high. And when you get an exit, and this is a path, like the kind of company you are building is path to get an acquisition in a number of years, right? That creates generational wealth for all the folks who have those stock options. So these are the things we'd love to see more local companies really take seriously. And I'd even love to see things like our county commissioners and our state reps figuring out a small business incentive program to offset the cost of establishing ESOPs, right? So if you can get a $5,000 grant to have an attorney go through and create an ESOP for you and your employees, I'd love to see companies go after that kind of incentive to nudge them towards the behaviors you want to see that really have an impact on people's lives, and it's not just a paycheck.
Yeah, it's great for them, and it's also great for us because we want employees who are motivated, highly motivated to make our company successful. And a salary is one way to do that, but if you own a piece of the business, that's such a better incentive.
Absolutely. And we've seen some great impact from that when New Belgium was acquired, right? Something like over 100 people locally got 6-figure checks just for how long they were with the company. Doesn't matter if they were like executives or groundskeepers or, not even tap room attendants. It was by a length of time with the company. Yeah, it's great. Anyway, let me ask you, what is the big, hairy, audacious goal, your BHOG for Netmaker?
Yeah, we're changing the way that networking works in the cloud. And that's the big goal is, and I was at KubeCon this past week, which is the big conference for Kubernetes, very nerdy. But
did you have a good time?
Oh yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
But Kubernetes has changed the way that compute works in the cloud and for businesses. And what Kubernetes did for compute is what we want to do for networking. So that's really the big hairy goal, is to build the networking platform of the future.
Great. Not a small goal. That's the way it should be. How do we keep up with you? I know you're pretty active on LinkedIn personally. What about from the company side? Is there a website? I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
TikTok. How do we keep up with you?
So for the very nerdy people, you can star us on our GitHub.
Nice.
So
you're the first person to ever say that on the show. That's great. Yeah.
That's actually that's probably the way most people who know us follow us is on GitHub. But you can also just go to our website, netmaker.io. We write blog posts every once in a while. You can also follow us on LinkedIn if you want more of those company type announcements. So search on there. We do have a Twitter as well. and a subreddit. The subreddit stays pretty technical.
Yeah, sure.
But the LinkedIn, I think, is probably the best way to keep abreast of the company announcements.
As our tradition, we allow the master of interactive media, Jay Walker, to ask the final question of the show. Jay, what do you got for Alex?
Yeah. I was thinking, I was like, ooh, I should try and get real technical with this question. But you mentioned just wanting to be in Asheville and starting your business here and where you wanted to live. What's your favorite thing about Asheville? What's your favorite Asheville thing to do?
Oh man, that really my favorite thing is just to walk around. Just we're in South French Broad between downtown and River Arts, and just going for a walk and seeing what's going on. I just love doing that. There's always something new to find when we do that.
Yeah, there really is. Never miss anything. Well, you miss a lot actually, but you see a lot too. But awesome.
Jay
Well,
Walker,
thank you so much for
I really was
joining.
hoping for a technical question, like
Yeah, I was like,
your
ooh,
processing power. How much RAM do you have on your computer? Nothing like that.
Coders are so collaborative too. Like, I'm sure when you put it on GitHub, like you got all sorts of messages. Like, you could improve this by
And you know what? Is that how you
integrating
do your
this into
sales?
the boop-a-doo.
Do you get sales through those channels?
Yeah, I mean, that's really our whole lead gen process. Is we have this big community of free users, and then occasionally one of them is a business who wants to use it for more than that.
Interesting.
So much to learn from Alex. Man, it's always a pleasure seeing you and catching up. We've met in person twice in the last 3 years, I think, maybe 3 times. So hopefully we start seeing more of each other in person. I think we're lucky that you're here and you're building this company from Asheville. There's just so much to learn from your story, and I feel like we're just at the very beginning. And I am so excited to watch you grow into the CEO you are becoming and the company you're building, and have you as more and more important part of Asheville. I very openly believe that our entrepreneurs today are our philanthropists tomorrow. And our entrepreneurs today are building the tools and products we're going to use every day of our lives. And our entrepreneurs today, a lot of them, get into giving back in some way or another. Some become our elected officials. And so I feel like people like you who are on the leading edge of change and progress in our community, whether it's through tech or organization, doesn't matter. You are our region's next leader, one of them. And so I'm so glad that you're here. We need more people like you, and I can't thank you enough for talking ship with us today.
Well, thanks,
brought it home. There we go.
Thanks for bringing me on.
Of course, man. Of course. All right, Jay Walker,
All right,
thank you
all good.
for co-hosting as always. I imagine our music is playing right now.
Oh yeah, the music's playing.
And we'll see everyone on an episode soon.